Hi, y'all. I'm Julie. I'm a trauma-informed adoptee coach and somatic healing guide. After overcoming deep abandonment wounds, I now help adult adoptees move from feeling lost and disconnected to experiencing profound self-belonging. I know what it is like to carry the weight of abandonment, to feel stuck in patterns of longing, adapting, and searching for belonging. To have tried every healing modality available and come up empty. My own healing has taught me this. The answers aren't out there, they're buried within me, and I'm here to guide you home to yourself. The Resilience Project podcast brings voice, visibility, and validation to the parts of adoption society rarely names, but all of us feel. Through an trauma-informed somatic lens, I explore the lived experiences of the entire adoption constellation with a tender emphasis on the adoptee experience. This podcast goes beyond storytelling into soul-telling. It offers embodied insight, compassionate education, and a path towards awareness, hope, and strength. Each episode invites listeners to understand adoption more deeply, not just with the mind, but with the nervous system, and to reconnect with the truth, identity, and belonging that were always yours to come home to. Welcome. Welcome, everybody, to the Resilience Project podcast. It is so good to be back with you. Right now, I am with somebody who I truly have become a fan of and I cherish very much. We've never met in person, yet this is a person who really has lifted me up in a lot of ways. I feel like Moses on Mount Horeb with you. You lift my hands. You want me to feel like I'm supported by you. You are constantly my cheerleader. And I don't know how I deserve this, but I'm really grateful for it. And last week on the podcast, I started sharing about that belief, I am a burden, and how it had impacted me personally. I got really emotional on the podcast. I wasn't aware that that was going to happen, but it happened. And on Monday, I posted a reel that was really just me speaking my truth, and I want to share it with everybody. And then we're going to go ahead and I'll do a little bit more intro of Jennifer in just a minute. But I want you to hear what this reel said, because it'll help you understand what we're talking about here.
You can do everything right and still feel off. For years, I felt this. I had done therapy, I had read books, I had learned the language. I could even explain my own patterns, but nothing actually changed. I would feel better for a while, and then the same reactions would pop up. The same beliefs, that same quiet feeling of being off. And I remember thinking, if I've tried everything, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm the common denominator here. But that wasn't it. What I didn't understand at the time was that identity doesn't live in your thoughts. You can learn the right things. You can say all the right things. You can understand your story as well as you can. But if identity was wired before words, you can't outthink it. There was something deeper, something unfinished, something that hadn't actually been addressed yet. And when I finally understood what that was, everything I knew finally had somewhere to land. If you're an adoptee and you've done a lot of work and something still hasn't stuck, stay close this week. I've got you. That unfinished feeling, it makes sense.
All right. So I'm curious, how did that land for you? Because you were the first
Wow.
person to comment.
The way that you put it, I could just feel it. I felt it. It's something that I have struggled with throughout my life. And, you know, for me, it was always searching for belonging, always searching for acceptance. And what could I do to feel whole? And no matter what I did, it was a place, just like you explained, it was a place inside of me, a void. And I never thought about that little girl that was given up at 3 years old. So it just really hit me hard when I heard the post. And I'm so excited that you're doing this because there's so much of us that you search and you try and you read and you do these things, you check the boxes, and you just find yourself in a vicious cycle and circle.
Very true. So, y'all, this is Jennifer Skiles. That's who this wonderful person is. She is an adoptee. She is somebody who has written a wonderful book, Vault of Treasures. And she has recently been able to reunite with her birth father. And honestly, the thing that blew my mind, you've had 2 different news stories done on you recently about this. How did you notice your narrative shift? If it did, when this happened. The other thing that's crazy is your dad, your birth father, your bio dad officially adopted you,
Yes.
which I think is pretty amazing. And so this whole I am a burden feeling and we'll get to some of your story through this, or we can even just put the link to the Adoption Roadmap podcast because your story was shared there. But what I'm really wondering is how did that, once it was brought into your life, how did that shift your narrative? This I'm a burden narrative that you inherited.
I have to start with writing my book was so therapeutic. It was owning my story. And in my past with my adoptive family, my adoptive father abused me for 6 years. That was a secret that I held in. And writing this book, it was taking the ups and the downs and putting it into words, accepting what had happened to me, and then also acknowledging a lot of the great things that came through the journey. And so when I found my biological father, him and I have just became really close, and doing the stories that we did through the different local news stations that were focusing on our reuniting and the adoption and so forth was a celebration to me. It was my voice was actually being heard for the first time, and I feel like ever really.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to that. I wonder if with that, recognizing that your voice was being heard, did you ever notice that whole subconscious feeling of that belief living in your body before you had language, that I am a burden belief?
I found out that I was adopted when I was 7 years old. There were so many questions that I had. I started realizing that for me, as an adoptee, you are made to believe you should be grateful. You're taught that you should be grateful that you have someone that has provided a home for you. There's so much more to that, and there are feelings of abandonment for me. The family that raised me never came out with words to tell me I was a burden, but my siblings through action showed me that I was. And for me, it was so hurtful. For me, in feeling like a burden, was I would notice the treatment between my siblings and myself. Recently, this really struck a nerve. It triggered me. I was at a class with other adults around my age. One had adopted a child, and she had her other children. And we were talking, and she said, sometimes I feel like my child that I adopted takes away from my real children. And when I heard that, instantly I could just feel it, just my skin crawl, my blood just raising up into my face. And I instantly felt like I needed to have a voice for this child. He's so sweet. And I just said, this child has had no choice in this. Their parents, your parents, you had parents that raised you, that provided you this home and love and never left you. All this child wants is unconditional love and to be accepted. And so when you say burden, I instantly think of those things too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've kind of referred to it, but I would love to know more specifics about how you felt like this belief, this feeling of being a burden, shaped your relationships, showed up in your relationships, maybe even with your siblings. What behaviors? Did you shrink? Did you perform? Did you
Absolutely.
disappear to make things easier? Things like that.
100%. I did all of the above. So for me, it was people pleasing. I still catch myself doing that now. It is like you're trying to earn affection and love and acceptance. And so I would always put, if something needed to be done, I would do it. And if there were needs that I had, I would put them to the side, put their needs in front. Those are some of the things I definitely feel like my voice, I silence my voice for theirs. And
Yeah,
like
because
I said,
you
I
didn't
still
want to
do
be a
that now.
burden.
Exactly, exactly. How can I be as easy to be around and not cause waves and everything just to for it to be okay, for them not to
Yeah.
leave or let me go again,
Mm-hmm. Or send you back. I've heard
send you
adoptees talk
back.
about that. I'm just like, my goodness. No, can we not, please?
And I don't know if
Oh,
you've been this way, but my whole life I have felt like, what do I do to for them to stay? What do I do for this person to stay in my life? Are they going to leave again? Is somebody else going to leave me?
yeah, I was the same way. In my marriage, I definitely felt that. It was an underlying fear that he's just going to leave anyway.
Mhm.
So why should I give myself fully to this because he's just going to leave? Everybody else does. And
Mhm.
crazy that that is actually what happened. But I think when you're talking about shrinking, disappearing, it's that whole idea of I don't want to be an inconvenience. Deep down, my existence seems to be a threat. So I need to figure out how to not make it that way. And
Yes.
that's where I think that burden feeling comes in. And then what you referred to earlier about this whole idea of, and I'm going to take it even further, where you talked about you should be grateful. I've heard, and I know you've heard this too, but I've had people say to me, you are so lucky. I'm just like, okay, sure. I understand how you think that. I didn't pick my parents, you got to. And I'm like, I didn't pick squat. I didn't choose anything. I had no voice. So again, it goes back to this societal understanding that we are all, those of us in the adoptee community, are trying to dispel.
Well, and the first time that really hit me is I had a client come in and we were discussing just family, and she told me that she was adopted. And instantly, this was before I really had started diving in for myself. I said, "Well, that's so beautiful." And she immediately snapped back and said, "No, it's not. It's messy, it's ugly, something had to break." It really took me back because I had even trained myself to believe I'm lucky. Don't complain about anything. You were given this. I'm not saying I'm not grateful for what I was given. I was
Of
given
course.
a home. But identity, my identity and belonging, I am just now starting to realize that piece of it. And I'm 46 years old. It took that long. I was adopted when I was 3. I'm just now working through these.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of baby scoop era or just beyond that. So, and even like there's been some 50s adoptees that I've talked to. It's crazy. A lot of us in these later stages are beginning to notice how this has impacted our present. And
Mhm.
it freaks the people out in our life around us because we've never said anything. Well, why? Because we had no words, first of all, and didn't realize how much what had happened to us in the first, for you, 3 years, which that's crazy. For me, it was 7 weeks. That Lisa Ann from the Wandering Tree podcast, she calls it the life gap. That life gap that we had, we don't have it. We have no knowledge of it. And so that impacts us in ways that we have a hard time putting words to. So it makes sense that the people around us wouldn't understand. Of course they wouldn't understand. They didn't have our lived experience. So how could they? So that's one of the things that I have learned in the last year is I can't expect people to understand, but what I can ask for is acceptance. If they are willing to accept my lived experience, we can move forward. But if not, then it's going to be really challenging if they're going to question everything that I say all the time,
My husband, in the process of me opening up and him seeing in the relationship with my dad, he actually came into my life not long after my mother had died in her car crash. And he also helped encourage me to find my biological father. And for the viewers, he never knew I existed. And so finding him, and he saw the ups and downs, the emotional roller coaster through the process. And so he was talking to someone at his work, and they were talking about, I have an adopted brother, and he's not really part of our family, and he went out and did his own thing and was really negative about it. And my husband, hearing my experiences with my adoptive family and how my sisters were after both my adoptive parents passed away, he had more of an idea of what really could be going on. And so for him, it was an eye-opening, almost a triggering experience. He said it triggered him when he heard the person at work say that no, there's more to it. It's not just maybe this person decided to not be in the family. It could be the family pushing them out. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the adoption touches a lot of people. And I don't think we really realize that. The things that blew my mind, even the statistics aren't solid. Look, when I was doing research on this for one of my podcasts, it's listed that there are 5 to 7 million adoptees in America. What makes me laugh about that is that's a big gap right there. So they don't even fully know solidly how many there are. So there's that. And then there's the statistics about addictive behaviors that we're 2 times more likely, and that this is a very dated one, but that we're 4 times more likely to attempt suicide, and that we're in mental health services much more than the general population. But what's interesting to me about that is the only people I know talking about it are those of us that have lived that experience. And then there's a select few, like Gretchen Sisson, who wrote Relinquished. She researched all of this stuff, and she's not adopted, but she was fascinated by it. And she's been going to bat for us. And the crazy thing is people listen to that voice more than they would listen to us because we're the wounded party. So we're the angry ones, which, I mean, granted, we should be a little angry about the things that happen to us. If we don't get angry, then we're sweeping it under the rug and we're living in that beautiful bubble.
And how beautiful is it I say beautiful, to sit with someone who understands. You and I have been through this. So when you find your tribe or your group that you and I could sit together in silence and understand one another. And I think that's where we have to go to, is we help one another through it because we understand like no one else does.
Yeah, totally. So I want to go to that place that we talked about before we started recording of how we stumbled upon each other. I couldn't remember. I was like, how did we even, interact? So what's your memory of that?
Well, so we had started following each other on Instagram, and I believe that maybe I reached out to you or you reached out to me, and we started just going back and forth with voice recordings. And as soon as I heard your voice, I just felt a connection. And you were just so relatable, and so you could just feel your love through the message. You could feel that you were really wanting to connect, and I know I felt the same way. And I started watching your post, and you were speaking to a place of where I had been and where I was trying to heal myself through my own adoption journey. And then I started watching how you were doing these seminars and things like that to try to help. And you and I just started growing a friendship from there. And I'm so glad that God is using that for us to try to help other people.
Yeah, me too. I remember too when one of those messages you sent me was when you were asked to be on the Adoption Roadmap podcast, which I referenced earlier. And I'll actually put a link of that in the show notes as well. But that was something that I remember you asking, how do I prepare for something like this? I've never done something like this. And it was really cool to be able to support you through that. And then when it aired, to be able to listen. And at the end of that, one of the questions that Rebecca asked you, I told her beforehand, y'all, I wrote it down. It's on a sheet of paper. So if you're on video and you're watching on YouTube, you can see my little sheet of paper that I have kept since I listened to that months ago. And what Rebecca asked was, give a shout out to one person that has influenced your adoption journey or the work you are doing in adoption. And I had no clue what was going to come out of your mouth at all. And you said Julie Brumley. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what? I don't even know. And then I started to cry. You said, we've grown close. She's fantastic to listen to, and listening to her has helped me. And I kept that because I need to look at this sometimes when I feel like what I'm doing isn't landing or what I'm doing isn't helping. I have to remember that we never even met in person, and yet we can still impact each other on a heart level. And I just thought, first of all, thank you for that. It makes my day and helps me remember that what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. But also it was so endearing for me. And then we actually had a phone call recently, soon after that, because we wanted to connect. So it was cool.
You are that for me too. I know there are times where I just want to take my story and help someone else when they're in that point in their life where they can't see around the corner, they can't see out of the darkness. And so I'll reach out to you when I have those moments of feeling like, I need some encouragement. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Grateful that we can support each other. There's something about the adoptee community. And even when Dr. Liz DeBetta and I were prepping and preparing for our episode where we were talking about our live event that we're doing in May, one of the things that was the big theme that came through was being together in community. Like you just talked about, even sitting in silence. We don't need to do much. We can just be with each other. There's something about being heard and seen and known and understood and witnessed without words that is really, really powerful. So I'm so grateful to share that space with you. And you did write a book that can help people with this stuff, with your journey and everything. So I want to get a little bit deeper into this part of the burden belief.
Yes.
So when that belief surfaced, when you noticed it, were you concerned about being unwanted or being displaced even more? Once you noticed that that was underneath the surface, did you notice that there was this fear, and did that influence your actions?
Absolutely. Unwanted, 100%. Feeling worried that I was unwanted, that again, that they were going to leave. And that actually continued throughout my life. I can look back on young adulthood and just throughout my life it might be relationships that I was in and friendships that I would have where I would always put my needs to the side and try to find a way to get them to see my value.
That's huge. That's it right there. I remember I would interrupt all the time. I just felt like they're not going to hear me anyway. So the only way I'm going to be heard is if I interrupt. It's so interesting. You know what I'm talking about? Did you ever
Wow.
feel that way?
Thank you. I just did. Wow.
You're welcome,
Thank you.
dear. There's another one.
Wow. It is. I love
Gosh.
you. Well, thank you.
Oh my gosh, you're very welcome. Didn't mean to do that. It just happened because that's what happened to me. So I know you and I talk a lot about this just because we both have a shared faith, but I'm curious how you think faith played into your healing. Did it help? Did it hurt? Was it both? Because we know from a lot of adoptees, they've been really harmed by religious systems, Catholic charities, whatever, that are out there that have done some damage. And so I'm curious for you, how did faith play into your healing?
So for me, I I had a relationship early on. My father that raised me taught me about Christ. Christ was a constant. He was the one constant thing in my life that never left me. And for me, there were times where I would be in the room alone by myself, quiet, thinking about my mom that gave me up and thinking about the abuse that I had been through and all these different things I would sit and ponder, even at 12 years old, 7 years old. You ponder on these things. You don't understand the depth of it until as you get older, but would sit and ponder. And the one constant in my life was Christ, and I could talk to him. And I started seeing the love of Christ through people that would come into my life. And when I wrote my book, I talked about how I had lost both adoptive parents, one at 18, another at 25. I found my biological mom. Her and I were together for 12 years, super close. And then she died in a car crash. And my search for family and belonging just kept getting reset and reset. Started realizing that God had this vault of people. I consider it a vault because we keep treasures. These people are treasures to me inside our vault. And they would come out as I needed them. So friends became family. And I just had to keep my eyes open to that. And I also had to realize that the right people that come into your life, you don't have to do things to earn it.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Yes, absolutely. And I also had to learn to love myself. So that love that I was pouring out over other people and doing for, I had to stop and say, Jennifer, I love you. I had to cradle myself in some ways as that 3-year-old child. I had to go back to that 3-year-old child and tell her that she is worthy of so much more.
Yep. Very, very true. I've had to do the same thing. It's interesting in my coaching program. One of the things that I do is I gradually, slowly, gently, without force, help my clients go back and visit those versions of themselves guided. And then by the end, what was really fascinating for me to see over the course of this last year of doing this was now they don't need me. They can go and do that themselves. They can go back and be with themselves. They have built resources enough, scaffolding is what I call it, to where they are able to go back and visit their inner 3-year-old, their inner baby, whatever that may be, and hold and cradle and nurture and experience that version of themselves in order to basically integrate them and allow them to feel like I've got you and I'll take care of you. And so that's something that is just so beautiful that came out of this that I didn't know would. And I'm really grateful for that. So I love that you've been able to do that because that 3-year-old really needs you. And my 2.5-week-old really needed me. That was the picture, the only picture I had of myself as an infant. And I finally was able to go back to her this last summer and spend time with her and let her know that I was here, even though I couldn't speak to her really because she didn't know language. She needed to see me do things for her. And so there was me visiting her multiple times until she felt comfortable enough to actually come into my heart. And it was really cool to have that experience with her. So you
I
just made
love
me
that
think
you
about
do
that.
that. So you're teaching others to do that. It's such a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Yeah. I think it's crucial. It's a variation of parts work, but it's something that I really take seriously and I would never push somebody beyond their ability, for sure, because our nervous systems know as far as we can go. It's pretty cool to watch. But yeah, it's been a beautiful thing. And to help that whole I am a burden idea, in a lot of ways, when you're able to go back and spend time with those versions of you that were placed, that were left, you're able to let them know that you see that and that that isn't the truth about who they are. And so that can dispel, that can pull out that belief pretty quickly. Now, you've got to get to that point where you can hold them. You know what I mean? It takes some time to build that, but it's really, really beautiful. So with that, I wanted to know all the stuff that you've talked about up to this point and all the things that you had to navigate. It's interesting to me when we talk about faith being something that has helped you with this. The father that abused you taught you about Jesus. There's something really messed up about that. And I know you know that, but the beauty of, and I said this before we started recording, the beauty of how you have not allowed yourself to be a victim of that. You are. Let's just be honest. You are. That's a fact. But you haven't allowed that to rule your present. You have allowed that to be something that has propelled you forward and to be used for you. It happened to you, but now you realize that it also happened for you so that you could help others by writing your book. Would you agree?
Absolutely. The more I talked about it and got it out, the poison out of me, the more I accepted it and pushed through. And now I just want to use it to help other people.
Yeah, well, you are. And the hope will be that your book will get into a lot of people's hands so that it can. I really hope that. So I want to go back a little bit. I'm wondering if there was a moment in your life when you realized that minimizing yourself, making yourself smaller, shrinking, disappearing, when you realized that that was costing you something.
So it cost me my peace. Absolutely cost me my peace. There were so many times where I found myself in bad relationships, toxic relationships with my adoptive sisters. They were terrible about today they would talk to me and then they would just stop. And 6 months later, they'd bring me back in and I would allow it. I would allow it. Once I finally started to accept the things, the loss in my life, start opening my eyes to how the adoption affected me. I think for me, when I was 3 years old, I wonder what that little girl felt like when she was dropped off with strangers. They drove away. I had a trash bag full of clothes. And I wonder what that little girl thought of. I know my parents were telling me that they would replace the word Cheryl, which was my mother's name, with squirrel. And that's how I was retrained to forget her, which I never did. And so later on in life, really starting to focus on who Jennifer was. And sometimes it's okay to sit in silence. Sometimes it's okay. You may feel like I need to be here. We can be tough on ourselves and easy on other people as adoptees. And I think you really almost have to flip that script and be easier on yourself, gentle with yourself, and really think, who do I have in front of me? What am I allowing? What behaviors am I allowing? And if you wouldn't allow it for somebody else, don't allow it for yourself.
Yeah, really, really good. I think the biggest phase in my program that does this exact thing is the self-compassion phase. I found that in my own healing, that was the hardest and yet the most transformational, was me being able to show myself the compassion that I needed, that I never showed, because I didn't want to be a burden to anybody outside of myself. So I would do everything in my power to shut down anything that would cause that to be the case, to speak my truth, to whatever, right? And so when I began to show myself compassion, dude, there was some things that just wanted to show up and come out of me that that's what unstuck me, to be honest. So you said that it was costing you peace. I think that is something we all desperately desire: peace, freedom, belonging, safety, love, all of these things that we so desperately desire. I think what we do when we explore our healing is that we're looking for so much outside of ourselves to heal the inside of ourselves. And what really does the work is when we are able to tune into what we need, what our body, not in a selfish way, but in a way that we begin to attune to our needs, because we really haven't before. And because we were afraid that if we did, we would lose everything around us, the externals that I was just talking about. The thing that I have uncovered in this process of my own healing is what I lost wasn't meant for me. It was something that I needed to walk away from. It wasn't healthy for me. And so it's learning that that's okay, and that that's not all on me. It's not all my responsibility. I can take responsibility for what is mine, but those who can't seem to accept the lived experience, they don't need to be, and not in a mean way, but they don't need to be influencing my life. I can set a boundary. And so, anyway, that's a
Yes.
whole other
Boundaries.
tangent, but I know you get
No,
that.
boundaries are so important. That's why I eventually had to set boundaries with my siblings that I was raised with. I was not going to allow them to toss me away anymore. I loved myself and I was going to have to walk away. Sometimes you have to walk away.
Hmm.
I noticed too, for me, I did try to self medicate with alcohol for a while. I
I did
really
too.
did. Yes. And it it was destructive for me. And when I met my husband, my now husband, he taught me so much about how to grieve in a positive way. So I was grieving on the anniversary date of my mom's passing, her car crash. She loved bourbon, so I would have bourbon and I would do a shot for her, which would turn into 5 or 6 shots and me crying and angry, and all the things that I was holding in would spew out. And so we were in New Orleans. This was the first anniversary that he witnessed. And we went to Memphis. And my mother always liked New Orleans, loved New Orleans. And so the Mississippi River runs through Memphis down to New Orleans. And he said, I've got an idea. Why don't we do this with that shot of bourbon? He said, let's pour it in the Mississippi River and float it down to her. And so we celebrated her. And that's where I go to the right people in your life. And you said this earlier is crucial. He helped me see that we can celebrate this and take the energy. It is okay and it is normal to be sad and be angry. Even through adoption, all these feelings are so valid. It's just finding a way to funnel it the right way
Yeah.
and reshape your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a beautiful picture of being able to pour it down the river and watch it flow away. I wonder how good that was for your system without you maybe even really knowing that it was a really healing balm almost to be able to do that instead of drink it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really interesting. All right, my dear, let's move into the next phase of this where we start talking about the gathering. So,
And you were talking earlier about being around other people who have been adopted and how there's a comfort in we
mhm,
understand one another. You see the same thing in veterans that have been
yes,
through war and everything, and they
yep.
come home and they find healing and comfort with those who have experienced those same things.
Yeah, I actually just talked about that on last week's podcast episode. I said specifically seeing shared pain on somebody else's face, meaning they understood what I felt, was that empathetic feeling is so shame reducing, because there's this fear that if I communicate my truth, it won't be accepted, or I'll be whatever, rejected, or all those things that we've already talked about. But seeing that shared pain, somebody who gets your pain, there's something unbelievably powerful about that. And there's a bond that
Yeah.
creates from that.
And
And it's crazy how
eye-opening
we're that way.
too. eye-opening too, because there's feelings that I've heard you share and I just a little while ago, and it's like, "Oh, wow, that's normal. This is a byproduct of this."
Yep, totally. And girl, I'm still uncovering it all. I mean, it just keeps coming up. And as I uncover it, I'll share it because that's just who I am.
Love it.
Oh my gosh. So, okay. So I've already announced on my podcast last week, and I've announced it on the socials, that I'm going to be holding an online live event called You Are Not a Burden, a gathering where adoptees can explore identity. And so my question to you, Jennifer, is if an adoptee is listening right now or watching right now, thinking, I resonate with this, but I'm not ready to show up to something like this or to invest in myself, what would you say to them?
What if there is something on that other side that will transform your life? Can you take the chance of missing out on that?
That's a good way to
It
put it.
takes one step, just one step.
Yeah, I love that. So, what do you think keeps adopted people isolated even when they know they need connection?
Fear of rejection. If you think about it, in our society, we are all fearful of rejection. I mean, you look at social media, love it, hate it, how much you compare yourselves to other people and afraid of being rejected for an outfit that you wear. Think about in school, bullies, all those different things. Add in adoption on top of that, where you were at your most vulnerable stage in life, walked away on
Mm-hmm.
and rejected. It's so much more magnified.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well put. So, did you feel like, or do you feel like community plays a role in your healing? Or did you try to do it alone for a long time?
I tried to do it alone for a long time, and I got myself into deeper holes. So for me, I did small things. I was trying to exercise, try to run. So I joined a group of runners that you would meet and go out and take a run and then sit back and have a drink and visit and so forth. And for me, it was, I didn't meet a lot of people at that point, but it was the act of trying and doing something. And so it may take several times to find who that is, who your group is going to be. But once you find it, for me, I found it through church. I found it through coworkers that I would meet along the way. I found it through social media outlets, finding you. So I would say don't try it once or twice and throw your hands up and say that's it. It's a process. You just have to keep doing it until you find that community.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that you said earlier is something that I share in my program all the time. It's finding those people who have earned the right to
Yes.
hear what you have to share and who you are. And that takes time to find those people. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I love that. Okay. So, why do you think spaces specifically built for adoptees matter?
Well, I go back to you have the ability to be raw and open, and you have the ability to say the things that I feel like a lot of times in society is against the grain with society and adoption. It's okay to say it's nasty, it's messy, it hurts. It took something to break to get here. I think being able to be in those communities where each one of us are on a different journey. Each one of our experiences is completely different, but there are things that I can learn from you. You can learn from me that in those communities we share, and you start realizing that it's okay that you're not okay right now, but we're going to help each other get through it, and we're going to help each other grow and learn. Some of the things that you thought made you bad or unwanted was something that makes you lovable. You're more lovable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think of the idea of, let me formulate it this way. What shifts when we sit in a room, even virtually, like you and me, with people who just get it? There's something about that ability to hold space, show compassion, empathy with others who get it. So, what has been your experience with that? What has shifted within you when you've sat in a room, even virtually, like with me or with other adoptees, when you've had conversations with people who just get it or get you?
Relieving.
It's
It's very
relieving.
relieving. For
Yeah.
me, it's because I don't have to build a case of why I feel this way. You just
Hmm.
understand. We
Yeah.
understand one another.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's really true. I remember on one of the support groups on Facebook that I'm a part of, somebody asked a question, what is one thing that is a pet peeve of yours as an adoptee? And I said, having to explain myself over and over again to people who don't get it. It's
Mhm.
just hard. It makes you feel like, I feel like I'm banging my head against a wall. How do you not see that this is a real lived experience?
Mhm.
Don't negate. It drives me nuts when people who are not adopted try to tell me how I should actually feel as an adopted person. Like, hey, you don't know. It's
How
awful. So you get that. Ugh. Okay. So if something inside of you is feeling a pull and resistance at the same time to even just attend this gathering, let's say we're thinking about somebody who's listening and totally resonates with everything that we're sharing, but there's that push and pull that they're experiencing. You've kind of already said this, but I'm going to ask you again. What would you encourage them to do?
maybe sit back and look at where you've come from and take a chance on growing and take a chance on your future. Take a
Yeah.
chance on your future.
Yeah, it's that whole idea of, you hear people say a lot, I've tried everything, or
Mhm.
I don't want to have to pay for something that I didn't choose, or whatever it is. It's that, or I'm not even worth investing in. We've talked about that before. Okay, we've tried these things. They haven't worked. I'm still stuck. So why not risk and try something new and see if maybe that's the window to a whole new level of healing? Yeah, go ahead.
Not exactly. Think about I kept doing the same things. I kept on that anniversary date, it was coming up, and I would sit and cry and take the shots of bourbon. And when I finally did something different, it changed everything. And it changed the way I looked at the situation. It was changed the way that I processed my grief. And so thinking about the feelings of being a burden and how that shaped your life and how you view yourself and how you view what other people think of you. Reshape that, do something different, try it.
Yeah,
Try it.
yeah. It makes me think of what Dr. Liz said on ours. She said, "Feel the fear and do it anyway, y'all." And
That's
that's how I even catapulted myself through this next phase. I got my master's, I was helping people, but it was all top down. There was no understanding of the body, and I knew there was a missing piece. I knew it. I communicated it to the groups that I was working with.
Mhm.
I know there's a missing piece. Once I find that missing piece, I promise you that I will share it with you. Well, what's crazy is a person who was in one of my groups found the missing piece later, and our roles reversed. I was her mentor, she became mine, and I now work with her. It's crazy, but that was the shift that happened for me. It was me being able to understand the language of the body, which that's where all of this lives anyway. We hold it here because it was before we had language. So, such good stuff. And yeah, you're totally right. So, I am so honored that you decided to do this with me. Very, very encouraged. And I cannot wait to see where your book goes. And I really hope that you can continue to promote it and share your story because it is so unbelievably powerful, Jennifer. Really, it is. And our stories need to be heard because you never know. Just like I said at the beginning, I had no idea how I had impacted you. None until I heard you say that on the podcast.
I don't think that even after writing my book and what adoption was for me and my journey, I don't think I really had um, dove into the community as how it affected everybody. I thought this was just me. And then when I started realizing how many people out there that need help, and it really lit a fire under me as to we need to help one another. We need to help each other get through this. And that's what I've loved about watching you, is because every day you're on there and you're just really trying to use this stage to be able to help somebody walk through and get to the other side and grow.
Yeah, it makes me think Lisa Turkhurst on her podcast, Therapy and Theology. She always says, we help you work through what you walk through. And so I like that because I think in a lot of ways I do the same thing. It's what we've all walked through it. Let's walk alongside each other. I mean, that's much better, you know?
Well, I
So
say that all the time is it's so much easier to walk through these trials with your army. As an army together, it's just so much better.
it is so much better. Well, this is exactly the reason why I created this whole idea of You Are Not a Burden, a gathering for adoptees exploring identity, because it's not about fixing anybody. It's dismantling this belief together in community.
Mhm.
And I think the opposite of burden, and I said this, I think last week in my podcast episode, the opposite of a burden is not independence. It's actually belonging.
Mhm.
And so I think it's important to realize that that's there for us to take hold of. It's there. We don't have to be searching outside of ourselves anymore. And so I'm really looking forward to this on March 3rd at 6:30 Mountain Standard Time. For you, it's 8:30 Eastern. It's 5:30 Pacific, and it's going to be online on Zoom. So if any of you guys want the details, they'll be in the show notes. All you have to do is save your seat. It's free for anyone who wants to attend. And I'm really looking forward to spending time with all of you. And as always, thank you so much for being a part of the Resilience Project podcast. If you want to be a part of a free community, I have a Facebook group that is also in the show notes that you're welcome to be a part of. I have all different ways that you can contact me. Please feel free to do so if anything stood out to you. I will also put a link to Jennifer's book in the show notes and a way to contact her if you'd like to communicate with her. We both really love having conversations with people, so please feel free. Our DMs are open. We enjoy it so much and look forward to talking to you again next week. And I will say one other thing. If something in this podcast really, really resonated with you, I would encourage you to rate the podcast and share it if you feel comfortable to do that, or even share it with another adoptee that you may know, or anybody in the adoption constellation that needs to hear it, because that's what it's here for. So again, y'all, thank you so much for being with me. And Jennifer, thank you so much for being with me too. It's been an honor to be with you, and I love you.
I love you too. Thank you for what you're doing for us. Thank you. I love you so very much.
I'm very grateful for you, and I look forward to talking to you more. We'll see you guys next week.